inspiration is everywhere and anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
It's overwhelming, especially I think like, the whole social media online inspiration is one thing.
Yeah.
And it's definitely a rabbit hole that you can get stuck in. It can be quite curated because once you kind of go down a certain avenue, the algorithm just puts you in a feedback loop. So you start seeing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
But it's also just so addictive.
I know.
I hate it. No, I definitely don't love it. It's mostly hate, but I'm definitely addicted to it. So I can't get away from it. You can't escape.
Welcome to Behind the Design, a podcast where we unfold the details behind the designs we know and love and explore how each project comes to life. I am Camilla Ingle, owner of Unfolded, an interior design and styling studio. In this podcast series, we dive into the details with our industry experts, covering topics such as the creative process, latest design trends, and how we, as an industry, work together to meet the brief and overcome challenges. Let the conversation begin. Luke, welcome to Behind the Design.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me.
So nice to have you here. So Luke Shadbolt Photography, how did it all start? Where was the concept? What was the driver?
It's a bit long-winded, so bear with me. I started actually, let me preface this whole long-winded background story with, I probably should have always gotten into architecture because that was always my interest as a kid. And, I was pretty set on that was what I was going to do. And then I did a year 10 work experience with a draftsman. And it was the most boring week of my life. I didn't learn anything.
So you would have been 16?
Yeah, I think I was a little younger. 14. I was young for school. Didn't learn anything, just was quite disillusioned by that experience. And then after that, didn't know where to go. Yeah.
Turned you off the whole architectural journey.
Yeah, it didn't seem like the actual, on the job was interesting, And in hindsight, it was just that one practice was not, I didn't learn anything from him.
And so young.
Unfortunately, very impressionable at that age.
Yeah.
Yes. So it kind of tainted it for me. So from there, I kind of didn't know where to go. And I started in graphic design at uni. So I did graphic design and started in that industry, still wanted to be involved in something creative. So that was kind of something that I could see was creative and there was, a future and a career in that.
Yeah, career.
I was working for a firm here on the coast while I was studying, which I think is a real asset if you're working and studying at the same time.
Combo, yeah. What do you find, when you say asset, what are your biggest takeaways from having that experience?
I would say the biggest takeaway is, especially when you're at university, it's a bit more theory. And then if you're working in the industry, it's practical, right?
Practical.
Whereas if you're going through TAFE, then it's more practical and less theory.
Yes.
I haven't done TAFE, but that's my understanding. Yeah, I just found it was a really good way of kind of getting that conceptual understanding and then, the practice. So yes, graphic design, I ended up working freelance with a bunch of surf industry clients and then eventually got my dream job, which was being the art director for a bodyboarding magazine. I
didn't know this.
Yeah, passionate bodyboarder from probably the age of 12 until, I still dabble now, so many years later. The first couple of months of being the art director for this magazine, I also managed to get my first camera and underwater housing.
So that was quite like a natural transition. Did you find that whilst you were doing the art direction, you then felt like, I want to pick up the camera, I want to capture
I always wanted to pick up the camera. Because I think the graphic design was, it just seemed like a good avenue. And then as I kind of explored it more, photography was always there in the background, but I really needed an outlet for it.
Yeah.
I was shooting photos back then, but it was all just friends and, life, but nothing kind of
more personal.
No business actually. No direction for a kind of career path. But then I'd finally saved enough money to do it. And fortunately, the editor of the magazine was also an amazing photographer. and he became a mentor for me. Phil Gallagher, very talented man.
Quite inspired by him.
Inspired, learned a lot. We're still good friends now. That's actually one thing I wanted to mention. I think that mentor relationship is, again, another essential kind of tool.
Very much so.
You've worked with mentors.
Yeah, I have. So since having unfolded, probably my second year in was during that COVID phase. So when I went from the transition from the second to third year, it just was different, right? Coming out of COVID, I don't know if you remember.
Yeah.
You know, working during that time was interesting for a lot of different people for different reasons. Some people were completely redundant. The industry was chaotic. You know, everyone was renovating. Everyone was at home. And I just felt completely overwhelmed once that all kind of dropped and everyone started traveling again because I had to pivot. And so getting a mentor or, chatting with my business coach, who's also my mentor, during that time was really incredible because you're getting someone who knows the industry, but they also can help you rationalize sometimes when you get a bit overwhelmed by what's right in front of you. They're able to step in. I don't know if you've experienced this too, but like they're able to step in and just not only rationalize, but like offer you the bigger picture, and broaden your perspective so that you're not fine tuning on what one client might have said, or
you can get too caught up in one individual aspect. And they're going to come in and help you see the bigger picture.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So, which gets you kind of going.
Yeah, dream job. Working, designing a magazine, shooting photos, getting paid to travel. That was like another dream of mine. And, it wasn't the most lucrative industry or business, but I was early 20s, getting paid to travel, working.
Experience, right?
And creative, and that was great. But then after about 5 years, we saw the print industry kind of, the imminent nosedive that was going to happen there. So at that point, I kind of started working in a little bit more of a broader commercial sense. At the same time, I started working a lot with my girlfriend at the time, now wife. And through that work, that opened up more opportunities. But that was kind of all reactionary. It was like there was opportunities coming in, but that kind of didn't last forever. And it got to the point where I wanted to have a bit more of a focus.
Yeah. So what was that experience like with Nicole, your now wife?
Oh, that was great. Yeah.
Traveling quite a bit.
Yeah, it was very organic because off the back of working with the magazine, she would be traveling for her work. I'd be traveling for my work. We might meet up somewhere and have a couple of weeks
in a country.
It was great. But then also, the other side of it, we wouldn't see each other for weeks at a time. I think at one point it was a month where we didn't see each other. We were kind of like, okay, that's enough. That's the longest.
That's the limit.
That's the limit.
Yeah. Which is so healthy.
Yeah.
Especially when you're both creatives, and I don't know about you, but I find that sometimes I'm a little bit opportunistic. And you can get caught up in, opportunities and this and the excitement and whatnot. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, hang on, I need to ground.
That's kind of the freelance life too, because when opportunities arise, you just want to take them because it's like you don't know where the next project is coming from.
Correct.
Yeah, we were working quite a bit together, and we were working on some big projects for companies like Qantas, a bunch of her kind of fashion clients.
Yeah.
And it was good. We work really well together, but we're both very opinionated. So it got to the point where we realized that maybe we shouldn't work together quite so much.
Yeah.
And at that point, I had discovered that my direction was taking me in a different way anyway. And that was when I kind of backdoored my way into the exhibition and fine art world.
Yeah.
I'd been working with an art consultant, and I'd kind of spent,
What, if you don't mind me asking, what is an art consultant?
She just randomly approached me about, she had clients that wanted something similar to what I was showcasing on Instagram.
So she's procuring the artwork by meeting with you and saying, my clients would potentially like something that you've got to offer.
Yeah.
And I'm buying it for them.
Exactly.
The face of. Okay. Interesting role.
Again, I learned a lot from her too.
I bet.
And at that point, so after kind of 6 or 7 years of shooting surfing and chasing kind of the perfect wave for other clients, it got to the point where I wanted to do something a bit more personal for me. And I just shot a series that was kind of the opposite of all that. Just I wanted to see the most kind of chaotic and dynamic ocean photography. So I shot a series I called Maelstrom and presented it to her. I said, look, I've got this series of photos I'd like to exhibit. What do you think? What do I do with it? It was very green at that point. And she took them and she said, look, I'll present these to some galleries and, we'll see if there's any interest.
Any interest, yeah.
She said, look, this isn't usually how it works, so I wouldn't be, don't hold your breath or anything.
Yeah. I'll give it my best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she presented it to one who I've now become represented by, but it was just such a fortunate timing thing. They had a slot that needed to be filled, had to be photography because they're photography, painting, sculpture, kind of across the board. But it had to be photography to coincide with the Head On Photo Festival in Sydney.
Ah, okay. I haven't heard of that. Head On.
Yeah, Head On. They do it every year. It's quite a big photo festival in Sydney. And so they were like, "Yep, let's do it." And that was in 2016, and I've put on 3 or 4 solo shows with them in Sydney, one in Berlin, one in London, and then a bunch of group shows with them. So that's been again just a big learning curve. Yeah, just learning all as it's happening.
And what a wild experience! Thinking that this could go completely nowhere.
Yep.
And then now you're like Berlin and London. Like it's pretty, you got to pat yourself on the back for this type of thing.
Yeah. And like I said, it was definitely through the back door.
Yeah.
I don't know if I should mention the imposter syndrome.
Yeah. Dive in.
Yeah. Off the back of, the back door thing. And
or would it be that, sometimes you don't think it's going to happen, not to be too heavy, but like, are you worthy of this? Are you at a state in your life where you could be in that position and have that opportunity?
I don't think I ever really thought that being an artist was a career path, like a viable career path.
Okay.
But I think having the background in the imposter syndrome, I would probably think that in any industry that I'm in, but it's also a driving force. Like you're kind of never satisfied with anything that you do. Yes. So you want to keep pushing and bettering.
More kind of mentality. Yeah, it is really interesting. And I think sometimes, and I've said this before on the podcast, I'm a big believer in the universe will only give you what you're ready for.
Yeah.
Without being too woo-woo.
Yep.
I think there's something to be said about that. And sometimes we don't think we're ready until we're thrown an opportunity or thrown something that we thought, oh, God, I've dreamed of this.
Yeah.
I never thought it would be my reality.
And then you just have to figure it out.
And then you've got to figure it out. But being so willing, it sounds like along your journey, you've just been willing after willing after willing and open-minded.
No, that's exactly right. Like just being open to opportunities. And then I think understanding once there's something that comes up that you want to really focus on, that's where I'm at now. So again, long-winded, but I'm getting to the point. I got approached by a local architect and after a couple of my exhibitions, they were aware of my work and a client of theirs wanted to commission a piece for one of their jobs.
And this was up here on the Central Coast?
It was, yeah. It was just at North of Oak. It was literally like around the corner from where I live.
Yeah.
Weirdly enough. So at that point, it was the biggest print I'd ever done. I think it was a 2 meters by 130 centimeter print, which was kind of pushing those files to the limit. You would,
in terms of from a pixelated perspective.
Exactly.
We can over pixelate. Yeah.
So
and it just changes everything, doesn't it?
Well, not to get into the kind of technical aspects. You can print billboards, but you look at billboards from 100 meters away.
Totally.
If you're printing a print that's mounted on a wall in a house.
In a residential property. Yeah.
Depending on the design of the house and where you're going to be viewing it from. You can make it, a different size and you can push it a little bit more. But at some point, you'll start to see sort of artifacts and pixels and weirdness if you go right up and look at the print in detail.
Yeah, so ideally, you need to, like, that's something that someone would hope that when they say to you, we want it this size, you're able to say, I can get close to that.
Yeah.
However, my opinion or from my experience, we should probably go to this maximum size.
Exactly. And then it's also, it's understanding where it's to be placed comes into it as well. So yeah, that's an aspect of it. But yeah, so they approached me for this piece, and I had seen their work before. White Dixon, I don't know if I can do a shout out.
Yeah, okay. Shout out. Yeah,
okay. They're great. They're a great team. It was really funny because Ben, one of the designers, principals, he just emailed me about this art piece, and I said, "Hey, I've been thinking and looking about getting into architectural photography. Would you be interested in shooting some of your properties?" And at that point, I didn't realize who he was.
Yeah.
His name's Ben White. And I don't know if it was a mind blank, but...
Or you just didn't put two and two together.
Didn't put two and two together.
Yeah.
And so we organised to catch up for a meeting, and we were meeting at one of their sites. I was walking down the road, and here's Ben and Johnny, the one of the other principals. Yeah. I was like, oh, hey, guys. These two old friends I hadn't seen in maybe 10 years. Yeah. I was like, hey, what's going on? And they're like, oh, we're here to meet you.
No way.
I was like, oh, okay, yeah, great.
Yeah, oh, you're Ben.
Yeah, you're Ben. And you're...
Yeah, that's so wild. And that's so nice. Like, I feel like that's what I've loved about moving back to the coast is, well, the Central Coast, I should disclaimer, is that it is a bit like that. You know, we do just all bump into each other and work out how we know each other and all the links and connections.
Like 2 or 3 degrees separation.
And then it's just around the corner from where you live.
Yeah.
All of this comes together.
Exactly.
It's pretty cool.
So yeah, I started with them. They were my first official architectural client. And after about 2 years of, I was sort of just doing it very slowly, just sort of, you know, dipping a toe in, shooting a property here and there just to build a portfolio.
Yeah. And
then it was around COVID actually. I had a bit of time off from normalcy.
And how did Nicole manage that? Like, was she still traveling and you were still doing that with her here and there? Or how did you both...
With architecture? Or?
During COVID?
During COVID. COVID was actually a really interesting time for us because, so we were living in New York.
Yeah. Were you there for the whole...
No, we moved to New York in 2018. But then we kind of come back for summers, and then we fell pregnant and came back to have Suki here.
Yeah.
And it was literally like
Emily.
When COVID was hitting, Suki was born. So we weren't even sure if I was going to be allowed in the hospital.
Yes, that was rough.
Yeah.
Time. Yeah. For a lot of families, yeah.
It was kind of the lead up was pretty intense. But then, you know, after Suki was born, we were in this bubble. We both couldn't travel. We were at home with a newborn baby. It was kind of pretty ideal, to be honest. And I say that obviously, you know, with a grain of salt because a lot of people had
in comparison to what some people experienced. Yeah, of course.
But yeah, we kind of just really bunkered down and figured out how to become parents. So
was that a bit of a soul-searching moment for you?
Yeah, like I think it kind of gave me a little bit more probably perspective, understanding of the value of time. And yes, so I guess the back of COVID, there was a bit more time. So I went and started studying architecture. Because again, you know, I was always passionate about it. Yeah. Did work experience in year 10. Yeah. Hated that.
I know, isn't it funny how it circled back?
But had kept an interest in it the whole time, and that's where the photography started.
And architecture is art. So you being within that graphic design, art, like it's all...
Yeah.
Yeah, photography is,
And so I went back to uni. I'm back at uni now. 2 years in. I've taken 6 months off to just, you know, breathe a little.
Yeah. Recoup.
But I'm loving it so far. Like structured learning as a mature student.
Yes.
You know, my class is full of fresh-faced 18, 19-year-olds, and I'm looking at all of them thinking back to my first time at uni and
memories.
How old and wise and worldly I thought I was, and
how naive we were.
Oh God, we were just children.
I know.
And I think learning as an adult, you have a lot more focus. You you're only there if you want to be there,
Of
obviously.
course.
So
It's more deliberate.
more
intentional.
deliberate, intentional. Yeah, exactly. It's not that I wanted to become an architect or not. It's just I really wanted to I don't really have any life regrets, but I think if I hadn't have done something to formalize my understanding of architecture, that may have been one. So I'm really happy to have been able to, as well, have the support from Nicole to be able to do it. Learning and shooting houses at the same time, kind of on the job learning has been an interesting... I remember the first house I shot, and what I was looking at then to what I'm looking at now is completely different.
Perspective.
Yeah, what I understand from an architect's perspective. And I'm not saying, I'm not an architect. This is from talking to them and learning on the job.
In the industry now.
Yeah, so I've got a much better understanding. So focusing on different things to what
totally
I was.
And it's so important, and this is why I wanted to have this conversation with you, because I find it so fascinating. I mean, I love taking my own photos of my own work when I'm there on the day and we've styled the property and it's all ready to go, because I know what, we've spent heaps of time on.
Exactly.
For example, the kitchen joinery, it could be a pocket door or, all those little small things. The details. I shouldn't even call them small things. They're definitely investments sometimes for the clients. But to the average person, it's sort of like, it's just a kitchen, and that's why having a really good photographer and the fact that you're now in the industry, your eye for detail would be sort of extra, in that setting, in the way of you're learning about architecture. So you're understanding different angles within the home.
Yeah. And it's also, sorry.
Understanding different angles in the home that are worthy of a really good photograph, and spending a little bit of time getting that angle right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And understanding that there are differing perspectives coming into the picture. It's the architect, it's the interior designer, it's the joiner, it's the lighting.
Yes.
There are so many pieces to the puzzle. So it's kind of, it can be, pretty overwhelming. I shot a property in Wombrel last week for White Dixon.
Yeah.
And it was easily the most expansive residential house. I mean, it was more of a resort, really. But and
doesn't surprise me.
The attention to detail that those guys, go through, and just the enormity of the house. It was kind of overwhelming to try and capture it all in a day. But thankfully, I'm actually going to go back once the landscaping sets in. So I'll have more time to
come back again.
Yeah, what I've potentially missed in that first round, I can. It's good. I'll be able to kind of reference and go through it again. But just understanding that it's not just the one hero shot of the room, which is kind of a starting point,
of course,
and then you've got to look at all the little details.
Yeah. And it is really important. And I think as a designer, and I'm sure I could speak on behalf of architects as well, that we hire people like yourselves because we need you to appreciate what we appreciate, in the home. And half the time the clients cleaned it all up, ready to go, we've styled it, or especially our role is to style it and make it look beautiful for that photography. And I just think having someone who can come in and really value that and get those shots and have those conversations. And I think you and I spoke the other day around inspiration as well, which can be a really interesting and overwhelming part of what we do. Yeah. Where do you find your inspiration? How do you feel about what inspires you and how that connects you to what you do?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because I think inspiration is everywhere and anywhere. It's overwhelming, especially I think the whole social media online inspiration is one thing. And it's definitely a rabbit hole that you can get stuck in. It's also it can be quite curated, because once you kind of go down a certain avenue, the algorithm starts just puts you in a feedback loop. So you start seeing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
But it's also just so addictive.
I know.
I hate it. No, I definitely don't love it. It's mostly hate, but I'm definitely addicted to it. So I can't get away from it. You can't escape it.
No. And it's so helpful at times,
Absolutely.
I've worked with photographers in the past, and I'm a bit of I try not to be, But at times I can be a bit micromanager when it comes to, but then again, I say that because I will make sure that my photographer who's coming into a space that they may have never seen. I've been working on this space for 2 years. I know everything about this space.
Yeah.
I know why I chose all the furnishings for that space too, and all the lighting and et cetera, list goes on. But I find that we really need to give the most detailed brief as possible to our photographers. And it sounds a bit micromanager, and that's why I use that wording. But at the same time, I want to give you that mood board, and then you do you.
Yeah, I think that's
It's not cookie cutter. I don't want you to repeat it.
Yeah, that's the key to collaborating with like the interior designer or the stylist or the architect or anyone involved. It is a matter of you've got your perspective, and then you've hired someone to come in because of their perspective and how they look at things and how they photograph things.
Well, it's leaving the experts to do their role.
You've got to be on the same page to begin with.
Yeah.
And there might be, those key shots that you want to get from the photographer.
Yeah.
And then it's getting them to understand your perspective and then leaving them to do their thing. Yeah.
And it's so important. Like, I value leaving you to do what you need to do because you're good at that bit. And I would like you to value that in me, and the client values that in me. I think once we all just trust each other and show that appreciation for you stay in your lane, I'll stay in mine. But if you need to bounce, let's bounce,
That's why you end up repeat clients. You work with the same architects, the same designers. You end up having a rapport.
Yeah.
You know that they know that you all know what's happening, and there's that level of trust.
Yeah.
That's something that I've realized more and more as you go. It's really like business as well. It's all about relationships. You've got to have some skill.
Yeah.
And you have to communication. Skill, communication. You've got to be flexible and be able to be worked with as well.
Yeah, like adaptable.
You can't be a diva.
Diva.
Yeah.
It's true. Don't be sassy.
Unless you're incredibly talented at another level, and then you can do whatever you want. But you
probably still get hired anyway.
Yeah, probably. Overwhelming. There's too much inspiration. It's kind of hard to sift through it all. Like it actually requires me to sit down and like go through all my saved notes on Instagram or screen grabs.
Yeah.
Just reference photos that I've taken, and it takes so much time to kind of sift through and find the one thing that you need to focus on, or like a couple of things that you want to focus on. But in terms of inspiration in general, I like to kind of think of it as being open to just observing and looking at the world and seeing, being open to seeing things as they come.
Yeah.
At the moment, I'm pretty, what's the word? I've got this obsession with trees, like the bark of gum trees.
Oh. Nature
specific. So nature in general. Like, I mean, my background
photography
is surf and ocean, and that's been and is still a huge inspiration. But nature in general, but then not even just nature. Like when we're in New York, there's not as much nature.
Yes.
It's a matter of being kind of open to your environment.
Totally.
And
different inspiration in New York versus when you're going for a bushwalk at Maitland Bay.
Yeah, like it's kind of funny actually. The Maitland Bay, that's actually one of my go-tos for a little bushwalk tree inspo. It's great having this. You can't really get more contrasted than New York to Maitland Bay, like Central Coast. So it's nice having that contrast, and it kind of gives you that balance. But again, it just adds more layers to that overwhelming inspiration puzzle.
Yeah. And it is interesting. I think we discussed when we caught up the other week around, having inspiration, but also sort of circling back to when I was saying when you're on site and when I'm on site and we're completing the photography. There's so much inspiration in what I do as well, and clients will send me massive Pinterest boards and all sorts of things, and like that's fine. But half the time, I want them to find a really personal touch in what we design for them and have it much more custom and personal and direct to their needs.
Do you find that that is a bit of an issue being based in Australia, that it's, access to a sort of limited range of products, or a more limited range of products? Or do you find that, obviously the world is open now, so you can get anything from anywhere.
Get it all shipped in.
Yeah. And I guess that's your role, right? That's the whole point, is you are aware of this and that, and something, tiles from Italy, or
that's it.
Furnishings from, somewhere else. Whereas if it's someone that's potentially, going down to Reese's Plumbing and looking through their catalogue, there's a limited range there.
It. Yeah. The shelf wall vanities.
Yeah.
Hung vanities. Yep. Yeah. It does come down to budget.
Yes.
If we know the budget's up there, then we know we've got the parameters to exceed and venture out and get way more adventurous with the project. However, sometimes the parameters are tight, particularly if, some people are just flipping houses. They want ROI, return on investment. It may not be that it's an Italian porcelain paper, which is amazing for us to be able to go there. And maybe down the track. But it does come down to the brief and the budget. The budget's a big one.
Yeah, it's always the budget. I guess it's also this is one of the biggest focuses for I guess the architecture degree, but it's the ecology of what is being built in Australia, and where the materials are coming from. So obviously Italy, there's a distance to be covered for shipping, whereas maybe there's a local sandstone tile manufacturer. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a local tiler who can do something similar.
Yes.
And you're supporting local, but it's the physical distance where you're sourcing it from.
Yeah.
Is another aspect of it.
Totally. And it's getting creative. I think it comes down to, you don't know what you don't know, and it's asking those questions. It's saying, hey, we really want this style, this design, this is the inspiration that we're working towards. Going and talking to your stonemasons, having those conversations, because half the time they're like, oh, cool, another slab I've got to cut down. It's pretty replica kind of work for them. But if you take the little brief or a difference of a challenge to them, they're over the moon.
Yeah.
They want to deliver.
Because all of those trades, they're all arts.
Yeah.
Those people that
they just don't come across like that initially.
Yeah. We had someone come to render a wall at our when we did a small reno at our house, and the builder we were working with, his guys were 3-4 months out. Yeah. So he's like, look, I don't know this guy. I'm going to give you a name.
Yeah.
Don't know anything about him. That's all I can give you.
Yeah.
If you want it done, next week.
Okay.
So I called this guy. And he's like,
little of intrigue there.
Well, we wanted it done. I don't know, just wanted it done now.
Yeah.
And called him. He's like, yep, I can do it. I'll be there next Wednesday. Next Wednesday comes around. He doesn't show up.
Oh.
I sent him a message. Yep, okay, I'm coming tomorrow, Thursday. Doesn't show up. I was like, okay, I don't know what's going on.
Not sure what to do here.
Yeah. He comes on Friday without actually confirming anything, just randomly rocks up.
Oh, no.
Doesn't come and introduce himself. He just starts rendering this wall. But I had told him which wall, so thankfully he did start.
Wow.
He was doing the right wall. But it was just this weird, bizarre, experience. And,
Did you do a good job?
He was
Do we know
amazing.
His name?
He was an artist.
Really?
It was just so impressive. Yeah, so impressive watching him do what he does.
Are we talking about micro cement or something cool?
No, it was
general.
Just a general render. Yeah, but it was
so interesting,
faultless. But yeah, his communication was just horrible.
He just showed up.
Yeah, eventually he didn't finish the job as well. He did 2/3 of it, and then he wanted more money for something. And I was like, well, I don't know. He hadn't finished the job. I was like, I'm not giving you any more money.
It's not complete.
It's not finished. And then he just never came back. He left all his equipment with us. So I did it myself, and you can definitely see where my attempt has
wild experience.
But it gave me an appreciation for those guys doing what they do.
Yeah. And it is interesting. I mean, I won't dive too much into it. It sort of takes away from our conversation, but just the DIY that is these days, you know, with the block and all that kind of thing. And it's sometimes you're thinking, if a client wants to do it, go for it. But also, that's your journey. I'd rather just be like, if you're going to do DIY, if you're going to do it yourself, even just like a third of the job to save cash, I'm going to have to give you the reins on that.
Yeah.
I cannot be the interior designer monitoring and project managing this project, having no idea what your skill set is.
Yeah, it's kind of an all or nothing thing.
It is a little bit. And I never used to be like that, but now I have to.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I don't know what outcome we're going to get.
Yeah, I'm definitely in that. It's not that I'm not looking to flip houses or do things ourselves, but I just have this mindset where I can.
Yeah.
And I'll try it. Totally. And it's going to save us money.
Yeah.
But realistically, I should just get a professional that does it properly.
And some things you can do yourself. Like, let's be honest. Yeah. And you probably thought, I'm just rendering a wall.
Every time Nicole asks me to do something, she's like, we need to get this done. I was like, oh, I'll do it. And she's like, no. What?
Don't worry.
And I was like, no, it's fine. I'll do it. It's not that hard. And then it just never gets done. I've got like a long list of things that just have not been done.
Yeah, totally. And that's just life, right?
Yeah.
We'll come back to it.
Yeah. I'll get there eventually. Or just hire someone that's a professional.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
Would you say that there's like a favourite project to date, or would you say that you're still very much dabbling with learning on site and all that type of thing? Because your Instagram says amazing, incredible, established.
I think, again, imposter syndrome. So I'm just always, figuring it out as I go. And in saying that, every project I shoot, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. It's kind of, I wouldn't say that there is a favorite project to date, but every project I'm taking something away.
I love that.
And it's a blessing and a curse, because our house is small. It's imminently going to either be renovated or, it needs to be renovated.
Yeah.
It was good for the two of us. It's like a small 2-bedroom, kind of really beautifully designed. It actually won an architectural award back in the 80s for like a beach house. I can't remember the architect off the top of my head, but he was kind of a part of the Sydney school. So it's got, beautiful high ceilings, lots of wood, really neat design. But you throw a 4-year-old child into that, and it's getting smaller by the day.
Yeah.
So we need
every corner is filled with
every corner and
toys.
Because it was made as a holiday house for that was its specific purpose. It doesn't necessarily have a lot of storage.
Yes.
So
different direction. The build would be in different direction.
So we need to add to that. And blessing and a curse. Every house, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. We can use this and we can take that. And it's like, and so I'm kind of, I love just the diversity of what I'm shooting.
Yes.
And that's I think the most interesting part is knowing that the next house is going to be completely different, or hopefully completely different. And, I just shot a house 2 days ago, and it was, it's kind of, similar setup to what we will, I think, eventually do. They had a heritage home in Kensington in Sydney, and they've added this, very modern, very like Tadao Ando kind of concrete. It's bordered by these custom stainless steel green framed windows, and they open up completely, so you can completely open up this back aspect of the house.
Wow.
Like all of it completely, except for the part that is next to the pool. Like the bottom windows are sort of locked off, but you can pull down the top.
Wow.
And it was
you got a fly screen in there, or
no fly screen? No. Very open. Yeah, like we had the whole thing open the other day, and we were shooting it at dusk, and I was worried about mozzies, and they're like, don't worry.
Yes, mozzies.
But you might just open up, a small section of it, or you might open up the back, or you might open up the the windows to the pool.
Quite versatile.
It was, this really interesting solution or design to the property. It was great. It's like, okay, we could definitely use something like this. You know, what am I taking away from this? You know, what am I taking away from that house that I shot last week?
Yeah.
But yeah, that diversity and
so cool.
Yeah, I like that thought that, you know, moving forward, it's always going to be different.
I find that exact same thing. Like the brief is always something different.
Yeah.
And it makes it fun.
Yeah, that's it.
And it's interesting just hearing you talk about like following your work and knowing some of the architecture you're working with, like Matt Woodward.
Matt Woodward.
Yeah. Bit of a shout out to Maddie. Oh, just beautiful work. Absolutely
Beautiful. Yeah.
Seeing something like White Dixon, their work has got that bold masculinity, that really beautiful high end, whereas Matt's work is more earthy and natural and
lots of woods
and just that really organic kind of feel to it. You know, obviously I'm very inspired by both parties, but if I was even walking into those spaces, the interior design fit out would be completely different.
Absolutely.
So therefore the photography is also different lines, different angles, you know, completely different brief for you.
Yeah, different light. The light is probably the biggest. It's the biggest contributing factor to everything because whether it's natural or whether it's you know, the designed lighting within the house.
Yeah.
That's actually that's one of the aspects that I'm most interested in, and I think that's coming off just a general photography background and kind of applying, you know, that knowledge to then architecture.
Yeah.
And because I hate, you know,
it's a dream combo, really. What you're doing.
Yeah, like it really feels like, you know, this whole career and this whole journey.
Yeah, the word journey.
The word journey. You know, from starting in graphic design to now, it feels very like a culmination.
Transition?
Yeah, like the culmination of everything I've learned to now feels right, what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And that's not to say it won't change.
No.
You know, that's kind of part of it.
Well, it's your oyster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be open.
Yeah. No, that's so cool. And so we'd like to finish off with 2 final questions. Mm-hmm. The first one is, where can people find you?
Easiest would be either Instagram or website.
Yeah.
So lukeshadbolt.com.
Mm-hmm.
And you can contact me through there, my email, phone number, I think. Or and that's got more of my fine art work there.
So you can see a bit of the history of everything we've spoken about as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my Instagram has a bit of a combo, fine art, architecture, you know, bit of personal life spliced in. Yeah, it's mostly Suki.
Yeah. Which is nice.
Yeah.
I like to see that.
Yeah.
And that's also, you know, why we're here talking about behind the design, because it's like, who are you? And that's why it's been so good to unwrap all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Are you ready for the final question?
Mm-hmm.
Character field.
Are you ready?
Am I ready? I don't know. What is the strangest compliment you have ever received?
Yeah, I like this question. This is great. One of the jobs Nicole and I worked on was for Qantas.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to work with the Qantas creative director for like the design and advertising role.
Mm.
And she was
it a campaign that they were working on, or?
We had a couple of different projects with them, so I can't remember what the specific one was at the time.
Yeah, interesting.
But we were working with her, and she was kind of taking us through everything that they did, which is like just she had a crazy amount of things to achieve for one person and a small team, like surprisingly small team.
Yeah.
And then at some point we wrapped up a project, and she was this really interesting, kooky's not the right word, but, you know, like... Quirky.
Witty.
Quirky, I think. You know, but like she was very like driven and focused on one hand, but then on the other hand, she was quite like airy and like, you know, I think like what we talked about before, like she's just open to the world.
Yeah.
And she, at one point,
character.
Yeah, she gave me the compliment. She called me a beautiful swan. And I was like, I was really taken aback. I was like, that is maybe the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. And I don't even know why she called me a beautiful swan. I can't remember what it was for. But
in what context?
I can't remember.
Were you on the plane?
No, we were getting drinks. I don't know if that had something to do with it, but yeah, it was just
Maybe
like
she had some tequila or something. She went into the spiritual realm.
No, it wasn't anything about like being drunk or
Yeah,
it wasn't anything about
no,
it was just
genuine.
It was genuine. Like, it felt so genuine. I was like, oh, am I?
Is that how you see me?
Yeah, like it.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Swan.
So I've taken that. I use that all the time
That's
now.
gorgeous.
And it always gets a good response.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful swan.
Beautiful swan. I mean, there's nothing wrong about it.
No.
It's lovely.
It's, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
No,
It's
thank
fun.
you.
Yeah.
It's really good.